at the end of the experiment.
Any questions?
So with this experiment, we want to understand and try to understand, for instance, which factors influence the way you move.
3, 2, 1, go!
And then because we are in time of Corona, of course, we are also asked sometimes to wear a mask. And what is the impact of wearing a mask on our movement and the way we perceive the other people?
3, 2, 1, stop!
So first, empathy is my field of research, so that's my topic. But then I met Dora. She contacted me and she said, "Oh, I'm really interested in empathy. I want to make a conceptual art project with empathy." So we started this discussion about how empathy influences movement and how social cultural differences influence movement and so far and so forth. And with Dora now we're going to use these movements information that we collect with the GPS to also create a piece of art, and hoping to see maybe differences through the piece of art, describing the characteristic of the people that participated, or either the influence of one of the two masks on the behavior.
You stay over there, I will stay here. The only thing is that the GoPro will probably see me. I'm here. I will be the shot.
Well, the idea of this project was born many, many years ago. I was doing a research on flocking behavior, and I was reading a lot about flocking intelligence and mass psychology. And I thought, what is the empathy role in this whole thing? So I started to read about empathy, and I found a book which was called The Empathic Mind by Professor Kaiser. And I started to read, and one of the things that struck me was that whenever you learn something new, the empathic mechanism is activated. So there are certain parts of your brain that are activated that are linked to empathy. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. I want to know more. So it's about 4 years ago that I contacted Valeria, and I said to her, well, I'm interested in empathy and I want to know more, and I want to know if there is a link between movement and empathy, and are you interested in setting up a collaboration project? And she was, and we started a very long conversation about how to do this. The idea was that I would use the data that are coming from the experiment to translate them into an artwork. And so what we're doing now is basically we're collecting a lot of data that tell us a lot about the movement of people in relation to empathy, but also, as we're now in a new situation, we need to implement the corona measurements. And that's also another interesting aspect of the project. We're looking at how this current reality we're in affects our movement and empathy. So what I'm doing now is I'm building a loom. I separated all the functions of the loom. So 6 to 8 people can use this loom simultaneously. And the idea is that they all have to figure out, without using language or sign language, how to do it.
It was an interesting experiment. I noticed a couple of things. First was that once paying attention to the others, you became less aware of the social distancing. I mean, I reminded myself of the social distancing, but I also observed around me that the 4 of us who were walking around became a bit more sloppy in respecting social distancing, which brings an interesting dilemma. So empathy on the one hand and public health on the other. So being more empathetic made you less aware about the public health. Apparently, that was an interesting observation.
Somehow it was a strange experience because it was there was silence all the time, and I had to think about not to communicate in the ways I'm used to. So I think that made me tired. I expected that people would start communicating by eyes, but I was very surprised that some of the participants didn't do that. They were just like, or more than I expected, you know?
What was your experience when you were with eye contact with other people?
Well, with the two persons that I didn't know, it was like, okay, just test subjects. With Marco, I know him, so it was funny. And I guess that influences negatively the results, but yeah, just by looking at him, I just have to smile. So.
Following the instructions, I noticed at the beginning I was not caring, for example, with the first task about what the other people were doing or their face or their expressions, and I was just, walking on my own, just keeping a distance. But then I saw that I became slowly more aware of what the other people were doing, how they dressed, and their influence in my space.
Shut down everything that is around me and focus on myself and try to perceive. But then you still have this challenge of keeping the distance and keeping, the 1.5 meters. So, but I think we've all trained this in the Corona times that whatever you do, you're supposed to stay 1.5 meters away from everybody. So you walk around. So I think it's something that we trained already, and that's kind of became our new normal in a sense.
The 1.5 meter distance rule gives people power over positions. So you can take, you can block people if you want. You can make the areas smaller where they are. If you stop somewhere at the end of a assignment, then maybe people feel a bit trapped.
I was always trying to keep a social distance, but it was sometimes hard. Sometimes there's this, but you have the large blocks and then the small parts. Sometimes you had to almost cross each other, and that's always for me also in places like supermarkets or shopping malls. Sometimes you just cannot keep a good distance, and that's always a bit tricky. On the one hand, I think it's only for a second. On the other hand, yeah, but it's still weird.
Heel neutraal. Het was echt tot, ik denk de derde opdracht of zo, was het echt dat iedereen super neutraal was, voor mijn gevoel. En toen moest ik een beetje daarom lachen. Toen dacht ik, oh wat grappig dat iedereen ook best wel serieus of zo is. En ik vond niet dat maakte geen contact. Ondanks dat we naar elkaar keken, hadden we geen echte connectie, zeg maar.
Ik vond het heel bizar of onwerkelijk. En dan bedenk je eigen van, ja, maar het is wel een beetje waar iedereen nu mee bezig is. Dus het is niet zo onwerkelijk. En een beetje ongemakkelijk natuurlijk. Maar ook wel soms dan zo'n moment dat je dan in één keer zo beseft van, het is zo'n gek gevoel en je weet gewoon niet zo goed wat je ermee moet of zo.
It was a little bit weird, yeah, because we had to walk a lot, in my experience, and do things that I mostly already do directly. So if I meet somebody, it's like you zoom in, you scan, and that's you do all the steps, but then in one step.
I felt like the Zen meditation, a little bit like that. I had done a course once, and it was very similar. But we weren't allowed to speak, and I like to speak. So I was just looking.
Well, actually a bit confusing, because I was not always aware what I had to do, and so the whole purpose of the whole experiment was a bit too unsure, for me at least.
It was also a little weird to be in something strange together, but also keeping a distance. And especially the part where we had to look at each other's clothes, because it feels like people are judging you. And that was the part that I felt more estranged from the other people.
Did you respect the lines, where there were some blocks?
How was? Did you see someone that didn't?
I actually did somebody that didn't. And it felt like she was a little confused at that time because it was exactly at the time we were looking at each other's clothes, and I noticed that made her walk over a line.
I think it was interesting to see how everybody responded to the different kind of things. It was also pretty interesting to see how everybody was sort of like aware of each other and looking at each other. I think it was pretty easy to see how people were feeling due to their posture or their way of walking. You can also see it in their eyes very easily, actually. And also to be aware of that, and also to be aware of space. And it was pretty funny because I realized that when the task went on for too long, people just tend to like sort of stand still at a certain point and just be like, oh, just looking at each other like, do we just continue walking or? So that was interesting. Yeah.
It was funny, it's confusing sometimes, and also confronting, because I felt a big difference what kind of assignments you got. For example, as long as I can keep the energy by myself, it was okay. But as soon as you start to take a look at other people's clothes, or what was the other assignment? Well, I remember if I walk and being conscious of myself, it's okay. But as soon as they ask me to take attention to other people, it's more difficult.
Surprise! I'm wearing a disguise. A disguise. Celebrity biography.
I wrote down a square. Well, I'm not very good in drawings. I made a square with a little opening that represents a small door, and the size of the door compared to the size of the square, has the meaning of the fact that it's getting out is becoming more difficult. So you really have to get through that small gap, and it's becoming difficult because of the stress of being outside with the corona infection, and because you have to take care of a number of factors. Wash your hands every time you come in and out. So every time you have to go out, it's an effort.
Nou, ik heb een ingevuld vierkant getekend en ik dacht eigenlijk daarna meteen, shit, ik had er langer over na moeten denken. Maar ja.
I tried to draw at least a guy meditating, with the fingers like this, because it's been a very important exercise of mindfulness for me. Try to, become conscious more and more of who I am and where I want to go and what I do with my life, and knowing that it's not an easy time. Things are not going as I want them to go, but maybe it's a sign for me that I should change. I should change my life according to what the signs that I'm given in this period of my life. So this is what I wanted to think, and that's why I drew that. But then at the same time, it's been very hard because my life is I tend to be rather extrovert and travel a lot, and then during that time I just couldn't be the person I usually am. So I had to combine both, a bit of weird unhappiness and boredom as well, with try to reconnect with myself and with my mission on this earth.
Yeah, it's a bit awkward drawing on someone, and and drawing my emotions is maybe not my strong suit, so I just did what it. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Maybe one of the thoughts that has gone through my head a couple of times is that I feel a lot less irritated than in real life. In real life, during the whole lockdown, or the days that I walked out of the house, I thought it was horrible to walk on the streets or to go to the market. So that I did not have.
Ik vind het dan best wel lastig, omdat ik heb altijd langer de tijd nodig om dan echt zeg maar bij je gevoel te komen. Dus ik was wel steeds zo aan het denken, oh ja, nou moet ik iets tekenen, wat ga ik tekenen, wat is mijn gevoel? En dan vergeet je een beetje, dan ben je daar zo mee bezig dat ik daar niet echt diep genoeg over na heb gedacht. Of ik had er eigenlijk iets... Maar ik had uiteindelijk golfbewegingen op de benen getekend. En toen sliep ook op een gegeven moment een beetje in elkaar over. En het ging eigenlijk over dat het... Nou ja, echt een beetje op en af, zeg maar. Dat je ook gewoon zo verward bent en niet zo goed weet welke informatie, ja, wat je ermee kan en wat je ervan vindt. En, dus dat was een beetje het gevoel, denk ik, dat ik probeerde te tekenen.
I drew a heart and a broken heart, and I made an and sign in between, because in the last period, or since March, I've been feeling a lot of good feelings towards co-workers and people coming together. But at the same time, I felt a lot of heartbreak because my partner is far away, and yeah, so it's kind of ambivalent.
The sign of the Jews, the 6-point star, and that's because I made a T-shirt with a we call it in Dutch the Jodenster, the Jew star. You know that symbol of the Second World War, and because I believe that anyone, all the people who are not going to be vaccinated, they will treat it like paria in the end.
I didn't really know what to draw, so I drew sort of our wristband around the artist, like, because lockdown kind of felt like you were like tied to a place, you couldn't really go anywhere, but on the other hand you kind of wanted to go anywhere. So that seemed the most logical in the moment.
I wrote down the word double because that's what I really felt the whole time. Double feelings, because I really liked the silence and that the whole world was a little bit, yeah, in English, slower. Sorry, I'm not a native speaker. So that's the part I really liked, but I also could feel a kind of collective fear. I also felt fear because it's invisible, and also you think how many people will die, how dangerous is it, and also what will be the reaction on the world and of the world. So yeah, it was really double. For me it was double.